of how to make the most out of these tests and make sure that your scores are as high as possible. Before looking at the exact nature of these tests, let's come back for 1 second to the issue of languages. 3 reasoning tests, the abstract, numerical, and verbal reasoning, are administered in your first language. So if you had chosen as your first language Romanian or Spanish or any other EU language, that is the language in which you need to sit the exam. However, the situational judgment test is administered in the second language, so English, French, or German. This has certain consequences regarding your efficiency at taking the tests. How fast can you read in your first language? Is it really the language that you are most comfortable with? Maybe, me personally, I might be more at ease reading in English than reading in my native Hungarian. It depends. It varies from one person to another, and that might also be a factor that you want to consider in your language choice. Whatever you choose, make sure to practice in those languages. Make sure to read articles in those languages. Make sure to think in those languages, because time is of essence and you need to make sure that you do not run out of time and lose points because of maybe a slower reading in a certain language. Here's a quick, it's a snapshot of an abstract reasoning test. It might look pretty abstract, as the name suggests. The idea is relatively simple. Which one is the next in the series? Which chart or which little figure from the A, B, C, D, or E is the one that should be the next in the above series? You have different elements, and here's like one tip that Gabor, the CEO of Online EU Training, he regularly does webinars, methodology webinars on succeeding at these tests. And Gabor all the time starts these methodology webinars by telling candidates the first step in an abstract reasoning is you look at, you dissect it into elements. You look at which are the little elements that do something on the chart. Rotate, flow out, come in, swap places, they do something. So you need to identify those elements, which is already a first step for you to identify the rule and the logic by which you can pinpoint which of the 5 options is the one that is the correct answer. When it comes to numerical reasoning, it's you always have a certain chart with data in it. And another important tip, something that we share at these events, also we have published several free tips and tricks articles that I encourage you to look at on the EU Training website, where we discuss ideas on how to make the most out of a numerical reasoning test by making sure you identify the years to which the data refer to. Because the question, if you look at this very example, you might get a question which refers to the live animal trade in 2009. And that's a year which is not even listed in the chart, but you need to apply some sort of calculation to make sure that you get to the right number. And if you by chance miss such an important element, you might, or actually it's more likely than not, that you will end up identifying the wrong answer. One point on the timing for the, let me come back 1 second to the abstract reasoning. There you basically have 1 question per minute, or vice versa, 1 minute per question. So 10 questions, 10 minutes. Numerical reasoning, you have 20 minutes and 10 questions, so it's 2 minutes per question. Still, it's pretty tough. And then you have the verbal reasoning, in which you have a certain text, just like this one, an extract from a press release, some sort of scientific essay, any kind of article, which is relatively of this length, as you see here, around 8 to 10 lines. Obviously, that depends very much on the language. English tends to be a bit more concise. Other languages tend to be a bit longer. And then for the verbal reasoning, there is the text passage. Then there is a question that says which of the following statements is correct. You have 4 statements. Only one of them is correct. There is no multiple choice. There is no incorrect answer. There is no cannot tell type of answer. So if you have done, say, the GMAT test or other similar multiple choice tests, you might have encountered such options. In the EPSO system, there is only one single correct answer. And there is a special, again, a methodology to make sure that you identify that answer in the most efficient, time efficient, and content efficient way. So you must not consider any outside information. You should look out for generalizations in the text, because the answer option may be very specific and it may contradict to what is contained in the text. You should identify what's a possibility. Imagine a sentence that says, this option may be acceptable to the European Parliament. Now, the simple word of may, it indicates a possibility, whereas something in the text refers to a fact. And this easily leads candidates to the wrong answer. And as I said, you only have a very limited time. In this case, you have 35 minutes for 20 questions. And there is the idea of similar wording. Again, a kind of trick, a kind of trap that is generally applied to make sure that you read the text with sufficient thoroughness and attention to identify the correct answer. One quick note, and that's a very good news, and we are very proud of being able to offer you verbal reasoning tests, because we have these verbal tests in 10 languages, and that's something very unique. We are constantly updating and improving the quality of these tests. We have done a very thorough proofreading just a few weeks ago to make sure that everything is up to standard, and you can practice from Greek to Bulgarian and Romanian. We are happy to have Hungarian as well, all the 10 languages to practice. Many free questions on the website, so I do encourage you to try to test it and use it for your preparation. Situational judgment, it's a little bit different. It's different in the sense that this is not a reasoning test in the classic sense. This is not a psychometric test. This is where a certain work situation, a certain professional context is described for you, and you are required to give the most suitable and the least suitable way to react to that situation. So for every situational judgment test, you will have 2 answer options, so to say, the least appropriate and the most appropriate course of action. So this way, you need to read a situation like this, when just the first sentence refers here, you are working on a complex project when one of the members of your unit gives you some negative feedback. There is a bit more detail, not entirely extensive details. So the context that you are given is rather limited. So that's why every word counts in what is written for you. You sort of need to put yourself in the shoes of that person, or imagine that you are part of this situation, and identify the worst and the best case scenario. In the answer options, you have certain course of action. You need to evaluate how would that course of action reflect on you as a future EU official. And this is my tip number 1 for the situational judgment, is that everything should be looked at, interpreted in a way as you are already an EU official. And that obviously requires a lot of understanding of the values that are esteemed in the EU institutions. So in terms of having the organizational structure, a hierarchic structure, you need to present very good skills of working with others, that you have lots of colleagues, you have lots of co-workers whom you need to cooperate and coordinate with. So if the situation or one of the answers says you spot your colleague taking some office equipment without authorization, how would you react to that in terms of the loyalty to the employer, in terms of working with others, in terms of making sure that the office environment is respected? So there, the first step to finding the best answer is taking each option, each answer option to the extreme, and trying to identify how would that reflect, how would that look back on the values and on the